The following is a presentation of the ForceCenter podcast feed.
From the center of the galaxy, this is the ForceCenter podcast feed, and this particular episode is Cues of the Force, quotes of the Force. We're just going to say things from the movies. No, Q stands for questions of the Force. We are excited to answer your Qs with some of our A's. I'm Joseph Scrimshaw.
I'm Ken Napzok, but I actually like this idea. What if we just did quotes of the Force, and we don't rank them, explain them, we just read just quotes for like an hour.
We just say, I love democracy. Yeah. Okay, moving on.
Next one. Yeah. I think that'd be great.
Very excited for that. Looking for our brand new show. We can't stop doing new shows. That one, that's maybe a one-off special. More on that in the future. For today, we want to let you know that today's podcast is brought to you by Audible. Get a free audiobook download and a 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. That's a lot to choose from. So, hey, how about choosing this one? Battle Scars by Sam Meggs. Ken is actively reading this book. By the time we release this episode, I will actively be actually reading this book. We've really fallen behind on some of our book discussion, but we're excited to discuss this one, and we'll be discussing it very soon. So if you want to give it a listen first, you can download your free audiobook today by going to audibletrial.com/ForceCenter. One more time, that's audibletrial.com/ForceCenter for a free audiobook. But we have still more A's. Take it away, Ken.
Yes, we have a current ask where our ask is to, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/ForceCenter. We recently achieved some big, wonderful things because of all of you. We did a live Star Wars ranked episode, exclusively live for our patrons, but then it's going to be live to the public in just a couple of days here. We hit our big goal with Jennifer Landa, reworking some of her past episodes of Jedi Beat and Happy Beeps into a new series where we'll take the audio and kind of make a wonderful NPR-style doc on our YouTube channel there. And we've had the Indiana Jones and the Perilous Podcast thing going here, but the next episode is coming, the Raiders of the Lost Ark discussion. We're going to release that on Monday, May 1st, and that's Patreon exclusive as well. And then we'll go public after Dial of Destiny. So that is where we're going. It's our current ask to check it out. And Joseph, I think we can announce now that we do have another little goal, right? We got one floating around. We're going to put it out there.
Yeah. No more floating. We're going to pin that down and release it. That's a bad mixture of images. Anyway.
There it is.
We pinned it down in discussion. Now it's going to fly. It is that we had so much fun doing the Star Wars ranked live stream where we talked about favorite scenes from the sequel trilogy. We're going to do another live stream to patrons, then available to everybody else. Star Wars ranked. Our new goal is at $2,200 a month. We're going to do another one of those, and those details are up now on our Patreon. I say predicting the future from a couple days. I'm going to get it up there on our Patreon, and it will be true that it's up there on our Patreon by the time you're listening to this episode.
Another time travel episode, recording early and releasing later in the week. Yes, that's it. So check out patreon.com/ForceCenter. That's our current ask.
Excellent. Yeah. And then we're going to add an I, info. We've got Q's, we've got A's, we've now got I, informational. We are doing this week another Q&A live stream open to absolutely everybody, the entire world. That is Friday, April 28th, 2 p.m. Pacific. We've been having so much fun doing these every month. We're going to have some general Star Wars Q&A hangout. We'll talk about all the different news from Star Wars Celebration, all the news that is coming. I'm sure Carrie Fisher's star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. Can't wait to read more about it and hear where it's coming and how close it is to my apartment so I can go walk by it. We'll be discussing all that stuff. And then we're having fun with Other Center where we talk about some Star Wars adjacent stuff. So we're going to open it up to talk a little bit about our experiences traveling. And we love hearing from people who live in some of the places that we got to visit. We love hearing from people who live in other places and hearing people's perspective on travel. So we thought it'd be fun to spend a little chunk of the podcast or the live stream rather on that as well. So if you are up for that, join us Friday, April 28th, 2 p.m. Pacific.
Indeed. A lot of fun to get there.
All right, we are now heading into those queues. We have 4 questions, 2 from Twitter, 2 from our patrons on Patreon as always, and we're going first to Twitter. And Daniel Zarlik. Daniel says, "Hi, FC friends. With the announcement of Filoni's movie, it's a safe bet that Ahsoka will show up, meaning she survives her show. But will she survive the movie? How likely is it we witness Ahsoka's final fate on screen? Could it be the story Dave has in mind for years?" Thank you. Thank you for the great question, Daniel. Ken, I'm going to start here. I respect everybody having different opinions, different perspectives. I'm not even sure for me, it's a safe bet that Ahsoka's in the movie. It would be like my 90% guess, but if somebody's like put money on it, I'd be like, I don't know if I'm that sure. I feel like the only bet that is entirely safe, from my opinion, about Filoni's movie is that it's what he announced. It's a conflict between the New Republic and an Imperial remnant. It is in some deeply undefined way a culmination of storytelling in the Mandoverse. And I think because those are the only 2 things that we know about it, we're so wide open for speculation. So it makes a huge amount of sense. I agree with Daniel that it makes a ton of sense that Ahsoka would be in it. Maybe Ahsoka's the main character. But I'm so concerned about all of us spiraling into assumption land that I question even that. If is it guaranteed that Ahsoka's in the movie? Where are you at with that part of it? And then we'll get to the heart of Daniel's great question.
So as far as Ahsoka in the movie, I'm right there with you. Where it's that's a good bet. It makes a lot of sense, but we're far out from it, and I'm jumping all around the map here because I do. Ahsoka's final fate is something I definitely see Dave wanting to be in control of. Right?
Yes.
We'll talk more about that. That doesn't seem like the right spot for it. That movie, but again, we don't know. We're far out from it. But I do see her in there, and also, you even have kind of Rosario Dawson campaigning for season 2 in comments or some of the high energy stuff. So I think it's a good bet she survives the show. I think I don't know. I don't know. You could go back in time. There's so much it's at play with this character. So, anyways, yes. If you're telling me right now, put money down. Yes, I think she'll be in the movie.
You think she's in the mysterious New Republic Imperial Remnant Mandoverse film? Yeah,
but you just said something about her being like you didn't say like she's the lead and that's your prediction, but like that's a possibility. That I don't see.
That you don't see. Okay,
I don't. Maybe I don't know. The problem is the Filoni's the wild card up. And it's funny. One of the things, we're recording this on a day where we did our news episode and we missed one of the other announcements. That this confirmation, that's not a surprise at all. That for the Ahsoka series, Filoni's the credited writer on every episode. That's not a surprise for a lot of reasons. One of them is that this is a character he's famously and infamously, depending on conversations you have in the city, in control of his character, as I think he should be. This is someone, a character near and dear to his career and heart. Makes a lot of sense. So this got Daniel. This is tougher than I thought. I'm going all over the place.
Yeah. And like I said, I think Ahsoka being in the movie is a pretty safe bet, as Daniel is saying. But I'm also just feeling so overly cautious about this film because I just feel like people have heard the bits and pieces and hear that it is heir to the Empire. That's what it is. Or, yep, it is. Din, Grogu, and Ahsoka are the main characters. Yep, for sure. And like none of those things have been said. So I think I'm just on high alert of wanting to speculate super duper uber responsibly about this one until we know more about it.
I think that's where I'm struggling to find the right words with you. Yeah, Daniel's got some great stuff here. I want to talk about even more, but like, I just, that movie has already got a reputation for something it hasn't said it's going to be, and that's not what Daniel's asking. But so I'm already finding myself pumping brakes. And,
I agree with you. We were both slamming on the brakes of our car, which we will be able to talk about our cars later because we have a question about that. All right, Daniel, thank you. This question is really fun. I want to get to the heart of what Daniel is actually asking, which is about Ahsoka's fate and where will we see it? When will we see it? I think my guess, my speculation, hopefully responsible, is that Ahsoka absolutely survives this first season. I think there has been talk from Rosario Dawson and somewhere else, I don't remember where, of we got to see how Ahsoka goes and if there'll be a season 2. So I really think that Filoni has an Ahsoka endgame in mind, and I think he's had it in mind for years. I think the question of when and how that story happens is murky. Is there a second season of Ahsoka? Is Ahsoka in his movie? Is she the star of his movie? Is that the best place for her fate?
Right. Yeah.
Is it? Yeah. Or is there even I mean, I think Filoni, I think he has an end game in mind, and I think he also never ever wants to stop telling Ahsoka stories. So there's that part of me of like, whenever it happens, is it there are 2 seasons of this Ahsoka show, then this movie comes out, then we jump 15 years in the future, and it's the final fate of Ahsoka is season 3, but there's room to do a prequel. Like, I both feel like the end game is known and is being built to, but also being held off. What do you think about that?
The being held off is interesting. It goes like we know the Rise of Skywalker ending hangs over a lot of it, right? Like the voice, but even he's fought against that already.
Like, you don't know.
You don't know if she's dead. She could have just been hanging out there next to her. I don't know who knows. So I think that's a little bit of a cheeky thing. Why would you want to plan an ending in terms of her character's fate? Which, by the way, I think is just an ending of one journey of her life in the beginning of another, right? So maybe that's also the answer too. Is you could also get the Mortis movie. I don't know. I'm not saying with any of this with snark towards Filoni, but what I would not at this particular point want to say, yeah, I got an ending for her character I want to get to, because why stop? You know. That's why I think I'm confused over it. I want to see the ending. I wanted to see the story that goes from a complete beginning, Clone Wars, to her ending, which really, again, would be more of a transition to the next phase. I do want to see it. Your point about this movie might not be the best spot is something I really agree with. Where like Ahsoka season 1 comes along, then he goes and concentrates on the rest of Mando in the movie and Skeleton Crew and all that kind of stuff and help him get that right. And then the movie comes out, and then maybe Ahsoka 2 comes on later on, and that is a different character, a different time, and a different point of her journey.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me structurally, that the hope for season 2 would take place after the movie. Yeah, we don't know when that movie's coming out. We know that unless Disney makes a change, they've talked about Mandalorian season 4. It's written. They've talked about planning it. Skeleton Crew is going to play in. Ahsoka's going to play in. Like, we got a little bit of story building before we hit that movie. So it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, what if Ahsoka features prominently in the film, but it isn't necessarily her journey, and then we have a second season of Ahsoka that is her journey. Right. Yeah. I really do think, I know that the Mortis thing can become a joke of like, yeah, Ahsoka's going to Mortis. But I do think that whatever her journey is something on the more mystical, elusive side of the Force. The Mortis thing to me is one of those fan theories that is built off of actual clues from the text. The fact that Ahsoka was brought back to life by the daughter, and the mystical sign of Moray being followed by the bird that's always there. Filoni himself, in a lot of his Force-related storytelling, is very interested in the mystical, elusive side of the Force that is so magical. We can perceive parts of it. We can not. It's never going to be fully understood because it is sort of larger than mortal comprehension. It's meaningful, but everything with Mortis, with the world between worlds, the fact that in the Ahsoka trailer she seems to be facing off against a red-orange blade man, Balin, right? In some sort of mystical space with symbols similar to Mortis and the world between worlds. Maybe it is Ahsoka going to Mortis. Maybe it is Ahsoka evolving into something like the Bendu. Maybe it is Ahsoka creating another space that is another access point into the Force. That is a new temple. That is her spirit herself. I just think we're heading to something of that ilk. I don't think Ahsoka's end is, and I sacrifice myself like Kanan or Obi-Wan and become, or Ben and become a Force spirit. I think there's something bigger and more mystical, which is, to me, that question of, is the movie the right place for that? If it's sort of to understand what happened to Ahsoka, you got to watch this arc with Yoda. You got to watch World Between Worlds. You got to watch Ben. You know, if it's like that, is the movie the right place for it?
Yeah, well, because that movie is to me, it's about the New Republic era, and in many ways, I know it's this climactic event, but I still see it as almost the start of New Republic era storytelling. Meaning that if that movie works, or you're putting it together, and you're like, we got a lot of story to tell. You know, you me and Jen talked on Tuesday about, you know, they got one movie, and then maybe we'll see if those movies work, and they'll announce more. Right? This isn't the era of announcing trilogies, so that's why I see that movie as potentially the beginning of even more storytelling. Even though it's a climactic event here, Thrawn, whatever you might want to say, there's still a lot of things to talk about there, and that's why I'm with you. I don't think that movie's a spot to end Ahsoka or transition her to something else. But I do really agree with you. For all the nuts and bolts, pew 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 fun that Filoni brings, the depth and the spiritual stuff is perhaps the strongest stuff he helps bring and carries on from George's legacy. So that voice in Rise of Skywalker might have been at Ahsoka Tano's House of Force Ghosts, a club she starts where it's a different than She's Alive, or a different version of it there. I do believe something else is going to happen. Your new sort of Bendu idea, or that's interesting.
Like that, literally becoming the Bendu, but evolving into some creature like that, or like that. That's even the history of the Mortis gods, that they were too powerful to walk in the normal galaxy and set themselves apart. Yeah. And that kind of ending makes sense to me for Ahsoka, because I think with all the storytelling, all the growth, at the end of the day, I think she is a symbol of the true Jedi spirit stripped down to its core of help people. Mm-hmm. And I really think whatever her ending is, that's the spirit that's going to be celebrated. So her voice echoing across some metaphysical plane, her to Rey makes perfect sense to me in Rise of Skywalker. Indeed. Yeah. And here's the thing, Daniel, I think we'll get a sense pretty early on with that show. Yep. I think the Ahsoka show is going to answer a lot of these questions, partially just because Ahsoka's current timeline is deeply unresolved right now of when does she do what, from the bits we've seen her after she travels back to that portal in World Between Worlds, and she's back on Malachor. But what time is it? How long does she spend on Malachor? When does her appearance at the end of Rebels happen? And her appearances in Mandalorian, her appearances in Book of Boba Fett, are they in any sort of order? All that's going to, I think, begin to be straightened out by that first season. Yeah, and I don't do the frame by frame viewing as much as I used in the past. I leave it to experts like Alex Damon. But like that trailer alone, the hairstyles, the gray robes versus white robes, there's a lot of questions to go frame by frame over on timelines in that movie and what we're getting to, or that show. Yeah. Similar shots of ships coming and going that were featured in Rebels. Yeah. All sorts of stuff. Great question, Daniel. I think at the end of the day, I think that great likelihood that Ahsoka is in the film, but when I keep my options open, I just don't feel like the film is the right place for the final fate, though. No, I agree with that. That's right now. And watch us be entirely incorrect. That would be fun, too. All right, we're going to move on to our next question from Jonathan Steelflex. Jonathan says, "Good morrow, friends of the Force. All over the internet, we see questions like who would win between Prime Blank or Prime Blank. However, due to Order 66 and other bad guy doing bad stuff scenarios, cutting short many people's lives, many had not reached their prime. My question is, who in the canon galaxy of Star Wars do you believe had reached their potential prime? I think this is a difficult yet fun question to think about. For instance, I don't believe Anakin was ever in his prime. For as powerful and skilled as he was, becoming Vader, I feel lessened his chance at ever hitting his peak. Luke, on the other hand, at least from what we know of as of now, has had much time to study throughout the movies, then gaps between them. So I think he may have been closer to attaining his prime than Anakin. Thoughts, comments, concerns? Would love to hear them. I have no concerns, Jonathan. This is a really, really fun question because, yeah, it can be a fun question of the who would win in a fight, and then that becomes like, okay, are we talking about Spider-Leg Maul?
Yeah.
Are we talking about Yoda, kind of hacking and coughing in Return of the Jedi? Are we talking about High Republic Yoda? We're talking about them in their prime. I think that's a really fun question to identify. Well, what is a prime? Who have we seen in their prime? And Ken, I want to start with Jonathan's thoughts on Anakin Vader. Do you feel like we saw Anakin Vader in their prime, or did their dance with the dark side make them miss out?
I do think the dance with the dark side waylaid his career, so to speak, if we're looking in the back of baseball cards. And actually, I want to start your definition of, or your question about the definition of prime is completely fair. I'm 15 years past my physical prime, but I think I'm 5 years away from my spiritual prime. So you tell me what's happening.
5 years out. I'm going to note it on my calendar.
I think I'm still getting there. So that's, I'm a big sports fan. So I get the prime of careers where age, physical ability, stats, everything lines up. I think that's somewhat of Jonathan's questions, but I think there's more of it too, because it is the spiritual side. To the Anakin side of it, no, I don't think we got there. I think he was so close. I think some of the Clone Wars era Anakin was the prime. I just still think he was a prospect in a way. He was still a sophomore player. He won the Rookie of the Year award, but they're still worried about he's not quite in the Hall of Fame. And I've seen a lot of players get injured, blow a knee before they hit that Hall of Fame, or go back injuries take him out. And I think the dark side took out Anakin from his prime. His prime would have been if he kept going, right, and fought versus joined.
Yeah, I agree. I think we really see him in maybe a physical combat prime in Revenge of the Sith, the way he handles Dooku. But I don't think that is his full Jedi, full Force prime, because that's how Kenobi defeats him. His arrogance blinds him, and he thinks he is so much more powerful. He thinks he's so powerful he cannot be stopped. And he finds out very quickly and very painfully that is not the case. Yeah. I really like the picture that Anakin, if he had been able to resist the call of the dark side, made a better choice, would have truly, in about 5 years, maybe defeated Palpatine. Then the galaxy doesn't fall. Maybe he even questions the Jedi Order and walks away, or demands some changes within the Order. Maybe then he really becomes in his full force power combat, but also spiritual prime. And I also love that Vader is devastating. Like almost no one can stand up to him. I love the way that he is portrayed in the Imperial era, in the Jedi Fallen Order video game, that your only hope at beating Vader is escaping him. Kanan and Ezra, like our only hope is to get away from him. Ahsoka can step to him. Kenobi can step up to him, but that's partially, I think, because they know him and they get him. So I like the idea that I can see people making the argument of like Vader's in his prime, and that great comic book moment where he's surrounded by, however many, dozens, 100, whatever, of the rebellion, and they think they got him. And he's got the line of all I'm surrounded by is fear and dead men. I can see people going, that's prime. But I feel like the storytelling has also been like he has to work harder. Lucas himself has said it. He lost his deepest connection to the Force, and he is ferocious and unstoppable as he is. He's wounded and damaged, and he is not at his prime.
Yeah, that whole mechanical side of him, right? That more machine now than man obstacle to connecting to the Force.
Yeah. So I agree with that. So let's then move on to the rest of Jonathan's question. Who do you feel we have seen in their prime?
Well, bad news, Jonathan. I think this is a light side leaning question, but I'm going to go ahead and say we've seen Palpatine in his prime. He won office.
Yeah.
Long play, war strategy, led to his empire, successfully isolated Anakin, defeated Jedi with a few swings. Sorry, Kid Fisto. Defeated Savage Opress Maul. He had a championship run, man. It wasn't a good run. We're not rooting for him. He's the Patriots in the 2000s and early 2010s, but that's a prime run for me. Not what the Jonathan was asking, but I think I'll get there.
No. I think Sidious's baseball card speaks for itself. The lightsaber. It's generous to call it a battle. The lightsaber teaching lesson that he gives and Force to Maul in Savage Opress in that Clone Wars episode it's so cool. And it's also like right on the verge of it. You could almost turn it into a cartoon where like he stops to eat a sandwich halfway through and still just demolishes them.
One-handed, like, with his eyes closed. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm like, he's, you see those battles where like, there's an opening and thank goodness we get a winning blow in. And like, he's showboating. And like, not only am I going to murder Opress, I'm going to do it double blade backwards.
Yep. True.
Yep.
Sorry.
Palpatine in his prime. I'm with you.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with a couple people, but for sure, Luke Skywalker. Yes.
Okay.
Well, I don't think we've got to see it a ton. I think we see it in the comic book graphic novel that I will not shut up about, Rise of Kylo Ren.
Agreed.
4-issue, bizarre, beautiful that it exists, filling out a little bit of Kylo's story, showing that Luke had a functioning academy, a functioning order where Jedi went off on missions. But there's the great scene that establishes the Knights of Ren, meeting them for the first time, discovering a cache of Jedi artifacts, and the Knights of Ren are going to take them from Luke. And Luke's got that like almost movie-like scene of like, not only am I going to hand you your ass, but I'm going to explain to you beforehand how I'm going to do it. While I'm handing you your ass, I'm going to tell you why you're losing. Just utter mastery, right? It isn't a question of, can I win? It's a question of, when do I choose to use this awesome power that I have? I love that Luke Skywalker in his prime, because I feel it does set up his story of, I have all this, I've studied so long, I'm so in tuned, I have off the chart powers, but maybe that leads to a little bit of ego, and maybe that leads to those questions of, well, even in your absolute prime, there are some things that come down to emotion. And, are you there for Ben Solo when he needs you, and in exactly the way he needs you, and no amount of off the chart force power in your prime is necessarily what you need.
Yeah, no, I really agree with that example. I'm sorry I keep going back to sports stuff, but like, that's the thing about your prime. You still got to work for it. You still got to show up and train. You still got to do it. And again, one bad knee injury and you're done, and one bad emotional decision, you might be done in your prime. I absolutely agree with you. I think we've seen flashes of Luke in his prime, meaning we just haven't got all the stories yet. I think the Mandoverse might be to thank for some of it. I think him at the rescue, I think him teaching Grogu is part of Luke in his prime. It's the beginning of the journey, maybe, and that journey to me begins at the end of the Return of the Jedi. That's the start of him ascending to some sort of prime, if you want to look at it that way. But I'm glad. No, please keep talking about the Rise of Kylo Ren book. It's an underrated one, and in terms of the Star Wars storytelling landscape. And I think you see, it's just at the right point in Ben's life, and it's clearly it's the Rise of Kylo Ren point, but you're seeing Luke have a good handle on who he is and what he wants to do.
Yeah, and the utter power of the light side is just absolutely great stuff in my opinion. I also think it didn't work out for him stats wise, but I think Mace Windu is at the height of his power.
I was going to say Mace. Yes, no, I agree with you.
Yeah, I mean, he's in terms of just combat, I don't think many people are beating Mace. I know some people think that Palpatine through the fight knew Anakin was coming. maybe that is true. I always interpret it as like, no, Mace is really good, and he had Palpatine up against the wall, and Palpatine had, in Ace up his sleeve, which was years of emotional manipulation of Anakin Skywalker, and that's what won the fight.
I really agree with that. I think you saw Mace in his prime, and you saw the end of his prime. You saw it come crashing down. But I think that Jedi we meet in Phantom Menace is one of the leaders for a reason, right? And talked about in that way. It doesn't mean, again, not saying he's perfect. And that might have been part of the fault, but I think, absolutely. Him and, let's not overlook Oppo Rancisis. That seems to be possibly a prime. I don't know.
I don't think we got to see Terra Nube in his prime yet, but I'd like that. That would be great. I think Avar Kriss in the High Republic is in her prime.
Yep.
I think Yoda is in his prime for a lot of the time we're spending with him. I think maybe not entirely physically in his prime by the time of Attack of the Clones, because he can still do everything he needs to do, but he is paying for it in the morning. He is going straight to the Jedi pharmacy for some painkillers when he gets back to the temple, right?
I do want to see a Jedi pharmacist. No, I never thought about that. Jocasta knew in the archives, and we got someone at the pharmacy.
Oh, I'm sure there's like a literal Force, sort of a healer who helps you meditate the knee pain away. Sure. Go ahead and go. No, you got some more?
Yeah, no, I'm glad you got into the High Republic era. I think that's kind of the cell of the whole era, right? It's a bunch of Jedi in various stages of their primes. It's the Order and maybe a bit of a prime. It's a long, Order's been around a bit, so hard to maybe find that apex. But also I don't know about you, but I find it, this is a great question from Jonathan, but I find it hard to answer at times, because to me, the goal of the Jedi is to always grow or change, right? Which seems to work against the idea of a prime. Now, again, no Jedi is walking around going, I'm in my prime. That's not the spirit of them at all. But to be fair to the question, I think we've got some great examples here. Avar Kriss was one I was going to say. I think, there's more storytelling maybe with Loden Greatstorm back in the day, a little bit more of his prime. I mean, our guy Porter Engle, man, I have the comic ready to go. Can't wait to read it. I've got 2 large, very expensive stacks of comics on my couch right now, and 5 of them, or about 4 of them, I think, are the Blade of Bardata stuff. So that could be someone coming out of his prime. I don't know. It's a fascinating question, but those High Republic's a great era for that.
Yeah. You know what I love about this question of prime is, I agree with you that it's a Jedi's journey to always evolve. And in some ways you could say, Yoda's wisdom in Empire Strikes Back, he's in his spiritual prime. He's learned every lesson he has. Terra Nube, jokes aside, having the wisdom of his age that he can pass down to Ahsoka and see what lesson she needs now, and kindly and happily give it. That's a kind of prime. But I also like the story of the Jedi, and the High Republic gets into this in really good ways of, we should always evolve. We should always be growing. The Force is forever, but it's natural that our bodies aren't. Some of us live to 800, some of us live to 80, and there is a natural arc to our bodies, and they change and they grow, and often they get weaker. That is the way of things. That is the way of the Force, as Yoda says about getting old in Return of the Jedi. So I think I love that idea of like, I'm still on my journey. I really can't flip and double lightsaber the way I used to. And I could still stop that rock from falling on that person, but I'm going to feel it more than I used to back in the day. I like that it's both.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I'm with you. I'm with Yoda. My spiritual prime's still coming, I think. But but the constant pursuit of, it's not the pursuit of perfection. It's a constant pursuit of your growth and your skills improving. That's part of it. Again, Palpatine got there. He's probably telling you he's in his prime.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Final one for me. You ready to have your mind blown, Ken? ObiWan Kenobi.
That's fair. Absolutely.
I think Obi-Wan is in his absolute prime in Revenge of the Sith. He has been through the ringer with Anakin in the Clone Wars. Obi-Wan does not relish combat, but he's been at it, and he is trained up. And then we see in his sad defeat of Anakin that he also has the wisdom to go with his skills and command of the Force.
I really agree with that. I think some people out there are like, Joseph should answer that number one. No, this is how you take the conversation home. I do absolutely agree with that, especially some of the stuff we got to experience in the Clone Wars series, which I'm so thankful we got to.
Mm-hmm. And I'm tempted to say, to take my ObiWan Kenobi fandom to the edge, that he's still in his prime in the Kenobi television show. That's part of what he's realizing of like, yeah, I'm older, but I'm not done yet. His command of the Force and his connection to it in that battle with Vader makes me feel like he's still in his prime. But how do you feel like about that? Am I going too far?
Too far? No, not at all. No, absolutely. I trust your take on him at all times.
Well, in the spirit of ObiWan Kenobi, I should be questioned about my love of ObiWan Kenobi. So.
Yeah.
All right. Any more prime thoughts before we take a break?
The one we just didn't get to cut down too early. Kid Fisto would have been the smiling prime. Yeah. Yep. He held out against Palpatine for, I'll time it someday, 28 seconds. He did it good. He did good. He tried. He did better than the other fellows in the room there. All right. Except for Mace. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be back with more Cues of the Force. All right, we are back with more cues. This time we have two from our patrons on Patreon. We're going first to our friend Brennan Marr. Hello there, Brennan. Brennan says, hello there, Ken and Joseph. L337 is one of my favorite characters in Solo, A Star Wars Story. Like so many others, I was very sad when she was killed, Brennan puts killed in quotes, during the mine breakout on Kessel. Our heroes, unable to save her, upload her brain into the Millennium Falcon's computer to allow them to navigate through the maelstrom and make their escape. In the years since the film's release, many fans have lamented the choice to have a character who fought so long and hard for the right to be seen as an equal to sentience uploaded into a computer without her consent and reduced to just another piece of technology without the ability to be free. In many cases, the blame has fallen on the shoulders of the creators and filmmakers, with many fans believing that it was unethical of them to write such an endgame for this beloved character. While I see the point, I don't entirely agree. For one thing, I firmly believe that just because a character or characters make a choice does not mean that the creators are actively advocating for that choice. Secondly, due to the chaos of the mine breakout, there wasn't time for Lando and the others to debate the ethicality of the situation. And thirdly, as we've seen again and again in recent media, e.g. The Last of Us, the MCU, Shadow and Bone, and even other parts of Star Wars, the decisions we make for love aren't always the best decision. In fact, they can be downright terrible, such as Anakin selling his soul to save Padme, being unwilling to accept the possibility of needing to let her go. Also, given the fact that L3 is a droid, there's always the possibility that her mind could be downloaded into a robot body at some point in the story. Long story short, the decision made in the movie doesn't bother me. I understand how troubling it is to many other fans, and I would absolutely love to get your thoughts on the matter. Thank you, and may the Force be with you. Thank you, Brennan. Thank you for this great question, and thank you for taking the time to walk through it and look at it from a couple different perspectives. I think that's always great when it's something like this that can be a lightning rod, that can have strong feelings. It's important to look at it from lots of different perspectives, lots of different levels, which Brennan does so well here. So, Ken, this is a big question, lots of different ways to take it. Where do you go? I do go a lot of spots. It's taking me back to 2018, huh? And I like how Brendan phrases it, looking at other people's perspectives, even if it's not necessarily his directly. I fall somewhere in the middle of that. Here's where I'll start with this. First of all, I get it. You have this droid that's about droids' rights, and that's played differently in the movie at times. Some people, I know some friends who just thought it was making fun of people who were looking for those kind of rights. I did not think that was the case, but that's again, my version of it. But I've had some kind of heated exchange actually around my fire pit about that. I think you got to give the creators a little bit of the benefit of the doubt, and this is where I'll start, Joseph. I think John Kasdan is a co-writer. I think learned some lessons, I think, from that film, because Willow, a series that I really love, is really wonderful in this kind of stuff. It's really aware. It's really aware of what it's doing in a way that the L3 thing, I haven't spoken with anyone with a Kasdan last name. Okay. Jake included. I really think there was wouldn't it be cool vibe to the decision. That's not necessarily right. I don't necessarily think it's wrong, but I think we're in an era now where you definitely have to think a little twice and think of other perspectives. And that's why a lot of films hire some folks to do that. That's not the actual job, various titles of that. But again, it's hard to have this conversation not being in those writing sessions or anything. But I think there's a little bit of like, we got this cool droid, and hey, wouldn't that sound you hear in the original trilogy that's kind of her, and let's do that. And then that doesn't necessarily hit for everybody for good reason. And I think there were some lessons learned going on. I'll start there with that. How about that? I'll start there.
Yeah.
A hot potato. You want it?
I do. I want to burn my hands and my mouth because I'm going to eat that potato. I will start as always with a caveat. It is a complex conversation. I want to share my thoughts and opinions. I fully own them as my thoughts and opinions, and I really respect that this is one of those issues that is about the story inside Star Wars, but is tied to extremely important real world questions of agency, perspective, who tells stories, how do we tell stories, what is the responsibility of what level of sensitivity when we tell stories. It is tied to so many real world issues that I just want to have the utmost respect of multiple opinions and nuance within those opinions. So with that, I whispered all that into the hot potato, and now I'll say for myself, I perceive it that it's very similarly to you. I perceive it as a something that was almost created backwards of it's establishing canon, this fun thing that the Falcon has 3 brains. 3PO's got the line in Empire about the the computer's weird having a weird conversation with the computer. I don't remember the exact line in Empire off the top of my head, the sound. And I think this is a really cool idea of like, oh, that'd be fun to kind of get a little bit into the spirit of the Falcon's a great ship, but it's got this, adjustment to its drive. It's got this computer that really makes it as like a living being, a creature, a character. The Falcon's a character. And wouldn't it be fun to build with that? And then, and they've got this theme in the film it's all about how much freedom is possible in this era where the Empire has made kind of basic personal freedom for everyone impossible. So we get a character where the Wookiees represent that. They're imprisoned. The whole debate about Solo keeps going, I can have personal freedom, and everybody goes, you bonkers? No, you can't. That's a ridiculous, silly thing to dream about. So L3 slots into that, and then I think those things kind of marry awkwardly in the film. That this robot, that this droid that's always building to being part of the Falcon has these fist pumping moments. I'm so glad that we took this job as one of my favorite lines, and that bittersweet. She found her purpose. Like I'm not just gonna fight with losers and bars about this idea. I'm gonna make it real. I'm gonna make it happen. So I think I really get where that is rough for people. I think the scene could have been tweaked ever so slightly. So it was either L3's idea to be put into it, or you still have it be Han's idea. So it's a hero moment for him, and Lando resists, and L3's final word is like, do it. Right. Or you could have even given any sort of nod or indication that that being a part of the Falcon is a joy for her. Right. She wanted freedom. She wanted movement. That's what this ship is about. Ultimately, she wants to rebel, and that ship gets to be a symbol of rebellion. Is that a joy for her? I think there would have been lots of possible ways to take this sting of questioning how L3 feels about this away. I think the other thing about it for me is that it isn't in isolation. I think Solo, in my opinion, is one of the best written Star Wars films. I think it fires on every cylinder. I think the ideas are crystal clear. it is fun and fast moving. While for me, being one of the deepest Star Wars films, it's so zeroed in on this idea of how dare you even dream of a little bit of freedom.
Yeah.
And how does an impressive regime like the Empire take away your freedom? By controlling access to everything that the basic needs that people have. But I think there are some blinders, and I think the L3 scene is even more challenging, taken with Val's fast appearance in fast end in the movie.
Yeah.
And is there room there? So we see two scenes of in this, to me, absolutely fabulously written film where it's Val's agency to choose that, but it's fast and it's brutal, and there's the great Star Wars tradition of we like that character, we'd like to spend more time with them. What? Okay, nope.
Yeah.
So that's my big picture thing. Is I adore Solo. I think it's brilliantly written. My personal opinion is I wish there'd been a little bit more nuance to both L3 and Val. Yeah.
No, I think it's great. But also, it's been a while since I've read the Solo novelization. Mur Lafferty's book. She has some wonderful L3 stuff in there, if I recall. And she has said L3 is her favorite character. I think for a while her profile picture was L3. So there's someone else's take on it as she wrote that book there. And I think now we're getting into some of those real world conversations where I always want to make sure I'm not defending any decisions that require more thought or nuance. But we've changed rapidly in terms of audience expectations. And I think that story, that script, which, by the way, I remember some of the rumors coming out of Lucasfilm that were hitting me at the old job, that this is the best script we've had yet. Like a lot of vibe for that, right? And I agree with you on one of the best written scripts in terms of its focus and what it's getting to. But it's if you're not aware of the audience's expectations changing, you can get a little it can be a problem, and you can get lost in that, and you can either choose to grow and be better from that, or get stubborn. And I'm particularly going back to John Kasdan, who's an interesting cat. He's an interesting character in the interview. For those who haven't seen the Willow series, to me, and there's a bunch of people who wrote it with him, including Bob Dolman, part of the original the movie. I really think there were some lessons taken from the conversation around Solo. I really think that, and I don't think that there's no interview I can point to, but I think that's part of it too. And that's what I look at it a little bit with the Solo stuff, the Val of it all too, where it's like, come up with this great scene. What a scene. And it means, and those characters have an effect on Han's life, but then you put it out in the public and people go, hey, the thought from my perspective. And that's happening and has happened more and more and more and more than maybe in 1980 when old Larry sat down to write things, like, I don't know.
Yeah, no. And I think, yeah, Kasdan he put out, we did a whole Star Wars ranked on like all of his behind the scenes of talking about, his journey. And he's the kind of writer who has shared his perspective. And I think he has talked about some of these, like, here's what I would do differently. I didn't expect people to react this way. And to me, it's a good and it's a healthy story of we all have blind spots. And sometimes that's why we want more voices. I don't think there's any malice if this doesn't work for people. I don't think there's any malice in it. I think it was a blind spot is my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with them.
I want to talk a little bit about the argument that Brennan makes as well, saying that we should let characters make bad or dubious choices. I wholeheartedly agree with that. And I think that there is, on all sorts of sides of this conversation, Star Wars is in general, according to Lucas, a morality tale. It's didactic. It's meant to say, here's the choices that come in front of you, and here's how to make a better one. Don't choose what Anakin did. Hey, Vader's cool. It can be a fun power fantasy. You can think the Rogue One scene is awesome. You can put them on bed sheets. It's fine. The dark side characters are cool and awesome. Palpatine's one of my favorite characters, but at the end of the day, the movies are clear about this is a bad choice, and here's why, and it doesn't work out. So there's Star Wars. Then there's other storytelling where, for me, like, some of the point of art is it's not didactic. It's not meant to be like, you should be like this. it is meant to wrestle with the totality of the human experience, including a safe place to play with darkness, fear, bad choices, people making hurtful choices to one another. And I think it's always fine if an audience says, I don't want to watch those kinds of stories, but I don't want our storytelling to all be well-told PSAs of characters always making good choices. So I do think that it is just fine to have characters make bad or dubious choices, to not necessarily assign those to the creators. The nuance for me that's important is, does the show or the story or the movie make an effort to frame something as a dubious choice? Like, you can just go into a movie that's just like, this is an art house film and this is an exploration of fear, and you're going to watch 2 hours of bad choices. Or there can be something like Star Wars that always does want you to wrestle with the choices, either impart a lesson or at least wrestle with the choices. And with Brennan's great examples of characters making bad to dubious choices
for love,
right? For love. Anakin's fall is shown as horrible. Maybe not everybody receives that message, but that helmet coming down on him in Revenge of the Sith and the horror of being trapped in these awful decisions that didn't get him anything he wanted. I think the story of Anakin is bad decisions told again and again. I love that Brennan brings up The Last of Us, and I won't say any spoilers. I haven't played the game. I just watched the television show. There's a bad to dubious moral choice at the heart of the end of that show. And the entire final episode is geared around putting that on the table and making that the point. And I think for me, I love seeing characters make bad or dubious choices. I think it's necessary for storytelling. It's necessary for us to wrestle with the totality of humanity. But I also think it's important, if you intend that, to frame it that way. And for me, one of the things that makes me, the L3 thing makes me feel like, just like that was a little bit of a blind spot. It doesn't feel framed as this is dubious. Should we question it? It just happens.
It happens. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. No. I really agree with you on that. There, it goes to some of the changing, not just changing the times, but the changing of how things are viewed and discussed. And sometimes you can't help that. Sometimes I think people discuss things just incorrectly. I go to that Kylo line in Rise of Skywalker, where it's meant to be bad, but also just even certain forms of satire, certain forms of we're going to show you the worst of the worst. That's some of my favorite shows. Always Sunny in Philadelphia, Curb Your Enthusiasm, Seinfeld, even back in the day. These are horrible bleeping people, but even those shows have had to learn as times have changed, society changed. Especially It's Always Sunny. It's done some drastic kind of perspective changes of like, we got to be careful if you don't, not even the characters have learned the lessons, but yeah, like you said, the framing of it, it can get misinterpreted in very bad ways. And not understood. And I don't think the L3 thing is in that category, but to your point of like, it was almost, again, I think it was like, wouldn't this be cool if ... And that came through and that rubbed against people understandably.
Yeah. And I think there is, I haven't read the solo novel in a while, but I think there is also sort of the implication, like it isn't just like a direct one-to-one, right? It's a part of her essence becomes one with the computer. Yeah. So, I want to give due deference to that as well. I think the idea is she's transitioning into a new identity. It's not just like, hey, I used to be in a body and now I'm a computer and, perceive things exactly the same way. I think there is a little bit of a transition. I'm also with Brennan. I really sort of agree with like, there's always possibilities. Maybe there's a story in the far future where they didn't have the tech to re-download her into a body, but now they do. I'm always, and I also think the way it's presented in the movie Solo is that's not an option. It isn't like we don't have a USB or that this would be no problem. It's death or this. So I will say that for the film, I think she's going to be gone or she's going to survive in this way that helps us.
Yeah.
And for myself, I just always, I in storytelling in general, but particularly in Star Wars, I accept tech and physics as they are presented. If there's a technobabble reason they can or can't do something, I'm fine with that. It's fantasy. The TIE fighters make noise in space. The travel times are based on the speed of narrative. I just accept the technobabble information.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah. I want to wrap this up with just kind of taking a step back to our personal feelings, because Brennan's really walking through lots of different perspectives and sharing why ultimately he's happy with this, with the L3 story. At the end of the day, for yourself as a fan, how do you process it? Do you like this story? Do you feel challenged by it? Where do you go with L3's story ultimately for yourself?
I really like L3 as a character. I think I've appreciated her more and more. And as far as the decision of these characters in the moment, she was shot in half. She was shot in two. She's on the ground. I agree. There's not so much time, and I do. Now's not the time to bring on the nuance stuff. You talked about it wonderfully earlier, but just like I think, at the end of the day, I really enjoyed what they did with the character. I enjoyed where she ends up, or at least part of her essence, like you said. And it was just, I think maybe I was on the, hey, that is cool that they did that type of thing. I also think this is all in service to one character. It's Han's story with everyone else around him. This is why a lot of people want more of this era storytelling. We want more Kira. We want more Lando during this time. I think you could go back and do Tobias and Val if you wanted to. But at the end of the day, I really enjoyed the character and took it as part of a sacrifice.
Yeah. Yeah. I have, like I said, the utmost respect for people that this really doesn't work or it really bumps for them. I think there would have been a more nuanced way to do it. But at the end of the day, I enjoy L3 as a character. I enjoy her story. It's tragic that she's cut down, just as she has said. I found my purpose. But to me, the film, like you said, Han Solo is the main character, and every other character is ultimately there in service of Han Solo, which is, even the Skywalker Saga films that are ensembles are still like, Han's not just there in service of Luke. He has a journey. Leia is not there in service of Luke. And in this film, it's called Solo for a reason. And to me, the film is ultimately about how difficult it is in this time to achieve even a tiny bit of personal freedom. And Val, and let's not forget him, Rio, he doesn't make it either. Val and Rio don't achieve it. Beckett doesn't achieve it. Kira only achieves a hope of freedom by plunging even deeper into Crimson Dawn and trying to control the system that controls her. We kind of leave on a cliffhanger with her of like, I'm trapped by this. I can't walk away from this, but maybe I can get control of this. And we know from future storytelling in the comic books, she does. But the story of everybody in Solo is about how much personal freedom are you going to get? And for L3, I can look at it as a sort of bittersweet tragedy with maybe a twist of happy ending, that she's another character who doesn't quite achieve that level of personal freedom that she wants. But I kind of have a headcanon that she does. She enjoys being part of the Falcon, that she wants to travel, to explore, to go to the farthest ends of the galaxy, that ultimately that she gets to rebel, that she, that people look up, see her as a part of this ship and are like, that ship's going to do what it wants. It's going to defy everyone and everything around it. I have the headcanon that this is ultimately joyful for L3.
Yeah. I would agree with that there. Yeah, but I want more. Yeah, give me more. Give me
more. Yeah, I don't know if this has happened in the comics, but I think this is the kind of thing too, like a follow up with Lando, communicating with her in some way would be interesting.
Indeed.
All right. Any final thoughts on the L3 question?
No, thank you, Brendan, for that wonderful thought starter.
Yeah, absolutely. We go on to our final question from Christopher Ferreira. Christopher says, hello, Ken and Joseph. Outside of Star Wars, my main interests revolve around cars. So naturally, the ships and starfighters of the galaxy interest me greatly. My question today is this: how would you envision your actual personal cars as ships, starfighters? To demonstrate what I'll mean, I'll go first. I'm lucky to have two vehicles, a Honda CRZ that I drive every day and a Lexus IS300 as a project. My Honda CRZ is a unique car in that it is a hybrid with a manual transmission. Damn. I added the damn. As such, I can picture it as a ship in the New Republic era, a one-man light fighter, but with an efficient hyperdrive for long scouting or exploration. My Lexus is a sporty, compact sedan with far too big of an engine in it, but it's still slow. I'm building it up for drifting, but in the context of Star Wars, I could see this being a sort of shuttle that doesn't look like much, but can scoot around and pack a big punch, like the Phantom from Rebels, but crossed with Din's N1. Curious to hear your answers. All right, Ken, we get to talk about cars. What kind of spaceship is your car?
Well, so I've mentioned before, a now 21-year-old Ford Mustang, which was a car I needed to get after I lost my other car. And an old friend sold it to me for $1. And it feels like the N1 before Pelly and Den fix it. Because it can still go. I just had it in the shop on my birthday. That's what I did for myself on my birthdays. Had to do, unfortunately, a large amount of repairs. And it can still go. You know, this is a car that years ago when it was my friend's car, and we rode to Vegas, and we got there in 3 hours. You're not supposed to. So this car has a past of it can go. And it's a nice modern design, but it's still now old, and it's like an N1. It's not as beautiful as an N1 or as an older Mustang. But so I think it has that. And I gotta always give it a little bit of love. And it sounds a little bit like the N1, both in good ways and bad ways. This is Din's N1. So oddly enough, and that would not have been, I drove a sensible Camry, a boring old Camry, which would have been exactly like Christopher's talking about with one of his cars, like a shuttle, but not even like a beautiful, Lambda class shuttle, which are elegant despite being part of the Empire, right? It just would have been like a freighter, just like is that a box floating through space? Would have been my old cars. But now here I am with a little bit of a relic from the past that still has a little bit of future left.
Well, the next time that I'm in your Mustang, I'm going to sit on the back and I'm going to take a little control knob and I'm going to knock on the window for you to go faster.
We could do it. That top doesn't come down anymore, but it's one repair I got to make still. Yeah, but it will shake. It'll shake and shimmy.
That is great. My current car, my wife and I's current car is a 2008 Toyota Yaris that we bought new in 2008. Nice. When the auto industry was trying to recover, so it was no interest. So bought it new and managed to pay it off, and it is a coveted car now. I know that there's been a lot of issues with supply chain. My niece is of driving age and wants to buy a car, and I'm hearing from my dad like some of the prices for used cars. I'm just what?
Yeah.
I thought they were $500 and some elbow grease. Like, oh no, exactly. No, deeply incorrect.
Yes.
Very expensive, very difficult market. So we get weird random offers every time we bring in our Yaris for fixing. Like, well, we could fix it for this much, or we could buy it from you. Like,
that's fine.
Please fix it. But at this point, it's an old warrior. It is the Toyota Yaris is a beat up old Y-wing. It has a little bit of pickup when it needs it, but not if it's too high up in the hills. It does not like that. No. It's literally got some bangs on it, some tight parking spots that have disagreed with the side. The hubcaps fell off, and the dealership was like, we can put them back on, but they'll probably fall off again. So it's not looking like a lot, but it is so solid. It's so reliable. It's been such an amazing car. This is like the beat up old Y-wing that I pat. Like, I won't give up this for anything. And then I pat it and a little part of it falls off. But that part fell off, but still reliable.
Yeah. I love that too, because you're talking about, you got the car brand new, so you've seen all the eras. And I know this is a good friend of mine, so I've known it. I remember the day he bought the car. So it's like I was on Naboo when he was like, look at this N1 Starfighter. And now here I am on Tatooine hoping it stays together. So it's to go from the Y-wing off the assembly line in the Clone Wars to where you are now, hoping you can get it to Dodonna's fleet.
Exactly. Yeah, I bought it in the Clone Wars era, and it's still gonna stand up to the Empire. I don't have a second car, but my father has and has had for many years a 1950 Chevrolet old, I believe it was a milk delivery truck. Also kind of rare. And he tinkers with it all the time, and it's still running. It doesn't even have light signal indicators. He sticks his hand out and does a signal indication, and I'm sure at this point most people on the road are like, what does that mean? Is he dancing?
That's so off topic. This is other center. There's a bicyclist crossing over. There's a weird intersection near my house that is kind of problematic. Pedestrians, bicycles, and cars all crashing into one each other often. And a bicyclist did the old school left turn hand signal. And I was just in my head, I was like, I'm so glad I understand that, because it did just look like he was waving at all of us. So I stopped, but other people probably would have gone.
Oh, yeah. So I don't know. But anyway, I think my dad's going to be around for a good long time, but he's been very clear of like, if you want it, that truck is yours. So I always think ahead about taking care of that. And I feel like that's going to be like Anakin's Spice Freighter in Clone Wars, the Twilight.
The Twilight, yeah.
It's old, it's retro, not great in a fight, but it'll chug along.
Yeah, love that.
Yeah. Great, very fun question. Thank you, Christopher. We are going to wrap up today with a Power of the Light Side segment. You know what this is by now. We put it out to patrons. If you'd like to share something positive about Star Wars, a memory, an event, whatever, you can share that. You just scroll down the posts section on Patreon. There's a picture of ObiWan Kenobi smiling at the Skywalker twins. We've got a couple of great entries, so we'll be good for the next couple of weeks. But if you want to add something, I know we're lucky to have a lot of new patrons. I want to let them know that this is there if you'd like to share something. This one comes to us today from Joy Mayfield Stewart. I believe it's Joy. It's Joie. But if that is incorrect, my apologies, and please let me know. Here is what they have to say. First, let me just say how much I appreciate your podcast and takes on Star Wars. It's always a great listen. My mom and dad first introduced me to Star Wars when I was only a few months old, as they took me to Empire Strikes Back. But I was 3 when I really remember seeing it and crying when Darth Vader told Luke about being his father. On a personal note, I was horrendously bullied as a middle schooler. I would watch Return of the Jedi over and over as Luke was my hero. He was in a place where a terrible truth was revealed to him, but overcame that and even brought his father back to the light. It was that example that would help me see that eventually the light wins out and the darkness ends. It helped me get through a very dark time, and now I still cling to that. That is great. Ken, what are your thoughts?
Oh, I love that. And as someone who was a few months old, seeing A New Hope with no memories of it and taking all this in a little bit later, I love this kind of shared journey just a few years ahead. Yeah, man, that's why we're here, right? Return of the Jedi, Empire, Phantom Menace, these little lessons, these little things that you apply to it. And maybe you don't immediately pick it up on that stuff right away. Maybe you see Return of the Jedi, you see Luke, and you don't necessarily say, hey, it's light in the darkness. It's as you get older, you start to experience stuff. Or you're bullied for this stuff. You're bullied for what you like. You're bullied for who you are. You're just bullied because people like to bully. And you start clinging to these things in a wonderful way. That's why I always say these are the stories that form us. This is our culture, and I love that. And I always talk about the shared, unique journey. We all go through this alone, and we realize we're all together. There's more of us. There's more of us.
There's more of us. Yeah, very well said. This is, I think, a lot of people can absolutely relate to this. I went to a bunch of different schools. I changed schools probably a little too often, and I had some ups and downs, but I definitely had some ones where like, this is miserable. And as I've shared before, like I had some ups and downs in high school, but there was a real fear of letting the geek flag fly too high. Told the story about a friend finding out I had the VHS of the original trilogy and wanting to borrow them, and I passed him to him in school in a brown paper bag like a drug deal. So so people didn't see me flashing my VHS all over town. So I really relate to that. And Luke in Return of the Jedi, I've talked a ton about how meaningful that was to have somebody who was a little bit more like me than the other heroes of the 80s, who was thin and I mean thin in terms of like not muscle bound, because that was something that I felt like I was not complete. I was not a real man because I was not bulging with Schwarzenegger muscles. So that's what I mean when I talk about Luke being thin. Svelte, not muscle bound. That meant a lot to me. But even is high school, college, early adulthood, I think I gravitated a lot toward Empire because it was really powerful to see. Look at everything Luke went through with Vader. Look at him in pain. Look at him calling out to his mentor, Ben, why didn't you tell me? Feel let down by people who needed to be there for him. And then through all of that, he still made these good choices and triumphed. That journey that's being discussed here, that meant a lot to me. And I think I didn't even realize in all of my rewatches how much I was just needing to see my hero go through the ringer and still come out triumphant.
Yeah, again, it's hitting you even when you don't know it, right? Just building you up.
Yep. So absolutely great. Thank you very much for that entry. Thank you to everybody for all the great questions. That is it. Ken, where can people find us?
Hey, if you'd like to find us, we're on Twitter at ForceCenter Pod. You can find us on Instagram, Facebook, ForceCenter Podcast, and of course, YouTube. Subscribe over there to get in all that wonderful things we got going there. You can find the podcast in a lot of different spots. Just search, you'll find us. Merch available at tpublic.com/user/ForceCenter. And we also would love you to check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/ForceCenter. Follow me at Ken Napzok across most social media platforms, including now Spoutable. If you want to watch me spout is what they're calling it. We'll see. See how that goes. Also check out my website, kennapzok.com, to link to other things like my own Patreon page, other shows like The Blathering, Pop Rockin' Radio, my ASMR channel on YouTube as well. If you want to relax with sports cards, it's all there for you. Where can they find you, sir?
I truly don't know if you're joking about, is posting called spouting on Spoutable, or is that a joke?
That is 100% true.
It is true and a joke at this point, right? Who knows? This is our time travel episode. We record this one later in the week and then post it later. So maybe I'll be on Spoutable by the time this gets posted. But right now I'm on Twitter. I'm on Instagram. I'm on TikTok. I have a YouTube channel. You can find all those things by just searching for @Joseph Scrimshaw or just my name, Joseph Scrimshaw. But for now, for myself, for Ken, for our spaceship cars, this has been Cues of the Force.
ForceCenter.